Peaches chose the exact moment when Fairmont Crest seemed at its calmest to drop the bomb she had been holding inside for years, as if the piece of this compound were nothing more than a fragile silk veil. Touch it lightly and it tears, hit it hard and it shatters. The cold evening wind swept through the rows of tall, straight pines, stretching the ground beneath them like a taut string ready to snap. And when Peaches finally released the truth she had been clutching like a cursed commodity, the air around her felt as if it had been ripped open by a sharp blade, exposing a piece of secrecy powerful enough to set this seemingly perfect community on fire. Eva was not just the woman who had been regarded as an outsider, a reckless intruder reaching for the Dupree fortune. She was Alan's own flesh and blood, the missing piece that had been stolen off the board of power for years. In that very instant, Fairmont Crest fell into a state of hidden chaos, like a still lake hit by a stone, its ripples spreading slowly, knowing it could never return to the smooth surface it once was. The glittering parties, the meticulously organized meetings, and the perfectly measured smiles of the elites suddenly became nothing more than cheap masks, barely hiding the trembling of those involved. No one said anything, but every glance that passed between them was laden with suspicion, calculation, and fear. The truth Peaches unleashed did not just touch one person, it shattered the order that many had spent their whole lives building. And in that moment, Leslie, the one who once held the power to define every story, who always saw herself as the backbone of the Dupree family history, suddenly became the center of doubt, dragged down from the seat of authority she had clung to at all costs. For years, Leslie had preached about lineage, legitimacy, tradition, and rules. She spoke of truth as if she were the only one who possessed it, as if everyone else existed merely under the shadow of the narratives she crafted. Yet now, all those words turned to ash when the secret about Eva clawed its way back to the surface, like a hastily buried corpse, reeking of betrayal and decay. Leslie had not only hidden the truth, she had deliberately twisted it, erased it, turned it into a commodity that served her hunger for absolute control. No one knew exactly why she did it, but everyone understood one thing: whatever Leslie's motives were, they had never sprung from kindness. Eva now stood before the greatest earthquake of her life. In the moment Peaches spoke, the world she thought she understood collapsed at once. All her life, she had felt something was off, as if her existence had been staged by an invisible hand. Now she had to face the reality that all the stability she had clung to was nothing more than a fabricated surface Leslie had carefully constructed. Her true origin did not just shake her sense of self, it opened the door to an entirely new war. No one would see her as an interloper anymore. They watched her instead with wary calculation, because if Eva really was Alan's daughter, she did not just have the right to speak, she might be the rightful heir that Leslie had spent years trying to erase from history. With every glance, every step, every breath, Eva could feel the air around her changing. Fairmont Crest was no longer a place of polite greetings and safe smiles. It had become a battlefield of souls dressed in silk but hiding daggers in their sleeves. Everyone had something to lose, and most of them were willing to do anything to keep it. Power shifted hands in silence, new alliances were forged in the shadows, and betrayals were sugarcoated just enough to be swallowed. Eva knew she could not trust anyone, especially when the one who had always been seen as the guide, Leslie, was the very person who had hidden the truth about her the longest. But what was Leslie's real motive? Why had she buried this blood secret for so many years? Was it to protect her own interests? To shield someone else? Or because, in the past, Alan had faced a brutal choice that Leslie felt compelled to correct in favor of the Dupree family? No one knew for sure, but the rigid tension in Leslie's face as Peaches walked away said everything. She was losing control, and nothing terrified her more than that. Meanwhile, Peaches walked into the fading light as if she had just settled a debt with her own conscience. Yet in that same moment, she understood she might have just signed her own death warrant if anyone decided this secret had to be protected at all costs. The winding roads of Fairmont Crest were not just for luxury cars to glide across, they were shortcuts for those who wanted to silence anyone who knew too much. Peaches understood that better than anyone. So why did she choose to speak now? Anger? Guilt? Or did she also have something to reclaim from the ruins she had just created? And would she be eliminated, forced to disappear along with the truth? Who would be the first to make a move? In the darkness behind Peaches, the eyes of those hiding behind their curtains followed her every step as if they were waiting for the perfect moment to end it all. Some wanted her silence forever, not because they cared about Eva, but because they feared the chain reaction this secret could set off. If Eva truly was Alan's daughter, it meant properties, trusts, inheritance documents, and mysterious funds Alan had left behind might no longer belong to Leslie or anyone else in the current Dupree circle. Everything Alan had built might have to be divided again. And the one who would benefit most if Eva were never recognized as Alan's child was clearly Leslie, the woman who had spent her entire life rearranging truth to suit herself. But if Alan had once named Eva in a private fund, and Leslie had stolen that right from her, then Leslie was not just a keeper of secrets, she was a thief of assets, a forger of records, a manipulator of family history. That made the question of Alan's death more suspicious than ever. Was it really an accident? Or a carefully crafted plan to ensure that what Alan wanted to protect, including Eva, would never be known? If his death had been staged to hide the existence of a child, then the person with the strongest motive was also the one trembling the most today. And who was Eva's real mother? Why had she vanished from records, from memory, from every whisper of rumor? Was she the victim of a hidden affair, or someone who had been forced into silence? If she was still alive, would she return now that secrets were starting to crack open? Or had Leslie already removed her from the board long ago, ensuring that Eva grew up in confusion, never truly knowing where she belonged? In all this turmoil, Eva was not only confronting the truth, but also those willing to use any means necessary to push her off the board. Every step she took was a step into an invisible minefield. If she fought back, she became a threat; if she stayed quiet, she became prey. And in the midst of it all, one final question hung heavy in the air over Fairmont Crest: was Peaches truly safe after what she had said, or had she just triggered a chain reaction even she could no longer control? Fairmont Crest had never allowed any secret to fade away in silence. As night fell over the compound, the warm yellow lights in each mansion flicked on all at once like thousands of eyes watching, calculating, preparing for a new redistribution of power. In a hidden corner, Peach's car suddenly came to a stop in the middle of an empty road. Her phone lost signal, and the street lamp above her flickered like a candle before a storm. She could feel a chill crawl down her spine, not from the night wind, but from the sense that she was being watched by something patient, silent, and far more dangerous than any person she had ever gone up against. At the same time, Eva stepped into Alan's darkened room. The room that had been sealed ever since the day he died. In the stillness, she saw the safe that no one had dared open again since Leslie took control. Beside it sat a small, dust-covered box of documents, as if it had been waiting all this time for its true owner to return. Eva laid her hand on it in a moment of hesitation, feeling the uneasy thrum of questions with no answers. There was something in that room that made her shiver, as if Alan had never fully left, but had instead scattered just enough traces to guide his secret daughter back to uncover the truth. Leslie stood in front of the mirror in her private room, staring at her own face and no longer recognizing the woman staring back. Everything she had built was starting to tremble, and in those eyes, fear mixed with anger was slowly hardening into ruthless resolve. She knew there was only one path left if she wanted to keep the power she had spent so many years constructing. And that path, once again, demanded that someone be sacrificed or that yet another truth be buried. As the night grew thicker, faceless shadows moved quietly along the stone-paved roads of Fairmont Crest. No one knew which side they belonged to, who had hired them, or what their true target was. But it was clear that a new plan was being set in motion, one that cared nothing for justice or bloodlines, and only for who would still be standing to rule this kingdom tomorrow. And in the midst of it all, Alan's safe let out a soft click, like a whisper from the dead. Eva drew in a deep breath and opened it. Only to be met by a depth of darkness that seemed to swallow the light, holding something that made her chest grow heavy with the terrible feeling that this truth would not only save her, but destroy everyone around her. Only one question remained: who would make their move first, before it could be revealed? Thank you all for your loyal support and listening.